Hi, everyone. Welcome to our 2023 PD Extravaganza. My name is Grant Kastner. I work for Extempore as our community manager. If this is your first time at our PD Extravaganza, welcome. We have a whole slate of workshops and sessions for you to attend this week. Our first one is, as I said earlier, a mainstay of our PD Extravaganza, Dr. Claudia Fernandez, with expertise in task-based language teaching. A couple just housekeeping items. If you have any questions at any time during the presentation, please put them in the chat, and I'll determine if we can share those directly with Dr. Fernandez during her presentation or if they can wait towards the end. She'll also be monitoring it as well for participation. And there's a little feedback form at the end. Please make sure to fill it out, and you'll be able to be entered into our giveaway, which is one of $50 gift cards for this week. So without further ado, Dr. Fernandez, take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Grant. It's my pleasure to be here. I was telling Grant that is I think my third summer doing this Extravaganza, and I always enjoy it. It's very enriching, and I'm very happy to be here again. I am here in Chicago. Let me just talk a little bit about myself. I am a professor of Spanish and a clinical assistant professor of Spanish. Here at the University of Illinois in Chicago, and I direct also the Spanish Basic Language Program, which consists of 4 semesters. I've been directing this program for 6 years. This is going to be my 7th year. And what I have done with the program is that I transformed 6 years ago upon my arrival the program that we had into a task-based program, and that experience has given me a lot of information, and I have learned a lot about what it is to have a class, a course, a program that in which tasks are the goals of the program and the unit of analysis, and what guide what guide our teaching, our programs, and our evaluation. So I am very happy to share with you what I have created, and my hope is for you to do something equivalent, or maybe to pick your interest about what is about tasks that are so effective and rich for language learning and teaching. So I also finished a 100-hour online course in task-based language teaching last week, and it was fantastic. People from Barcelona have I can give you more information if you're interested, but people from Barcelona have this online course, which is absolutely wonderful, and I just finished it. So it is very nice for me to share with you what I have learned, not only as an experience doing, creating a program task-based, but also what I have learned, from studying and learning from others as well. So the workshop, today is going to be a workshop. This time is a workshop, and it's 2 sessions, as you know. So my purpose with this workshop is for you to, if you don't have at least something concrete in your hands, because it might be too ambitious, at least to have all the information that you can have in order to maybe adapt something that you already know that looks more like tasks in your class, or maybe giving you some inspiration to continue what you're doing, that it is task-based, etc. So I would like for you to really get something concrete that you can pinpoint and specify what is that and help you in the next year. So hopefully we're gonna do that. So let's start. And what is that we're going to do is this first part, the task of this first part, of the goal of this first part, is for you to identify what a target task is, right? And to have something in your hands, like a piece of material that you can call, well, this is a target task that I can use in my class, or I could use in my class. So let's see what is that we're gonna do, just to have the whole picture first. So today, right, I had asked you, and maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but if you didn't do it, it's okay. We will have time to do it here. But I would like to ask you, I asked you to, from your repertoire of your materials, select one that has an activity. It can be a multiple steps activity, right? That you have tried and that was successful for you to, and you would like to try it, right? Or it was successful, or you would like to try it because you think it has potential, right? And the most important thing is for you to be ready to explain why you find this activity valuable for the goals of your course. So we're going to start from that. We're going to have this approach from, instead of top down, as I usually do, let's start from what you have. So at the end, in an hour or something, my goal is for you to identify what a target task is, right? That is going to lead your lesson plan, that is based on a pedagogic task that we're going to do tomorrow. Okay, so tomorrow we're going to do a pedagogic task. I'm going to talk about that, as we go on, and tomorrow we're going to have the chance to create these things as well. Okay, so let's start with your activity. I don't know if you already have the activities, if you have it in your hand, if you have a textbook, maybe from a textbook, maybe from a piece of paper that you already have, maybe you have it in your head, right? So think about an activity that you have done in your classes, right? And that it has been pretty successful, or that you like for some reason. And let's analyze it. I'm gonna give you like a couple of minutes to analyze it. When you think about your task, well, I did this activity in my class and it seemed to work. Okay, why? Let's start asking, but importantly, super important question, why this activity was successful. So I'm going to ask you a few questions and you answer this question in your head. If you have questions, let me know and I can explain. But as I go, right, make a note or think, have a clear thought about what the answer could be. So this activity that you have, the activity that you have in your head or in writing, what is the purpose of this activity? That is our main question. Why this activity? What do I want to accomplish with this activity? And is the purpose communicative? Not all the activities have a communicative purpose. What do I mean when I say is the purpose communicative? Well, let's see what communication is. So communicative, right, means that it's an activity whose main purpose is not linguistic. That is, if you say, well, this activity is very good to practice the commands or the present perfect or to practice vocabulary, well, that is not a communicative activity. It might be another thing. I'm not saying that is not valid, but that is not, if your goal is that one, then your activity is not a communicative one. So a communication is an activity, a communicative activity is an activity whose main purpose is not linguistic and involves the interpretation or the negotiation on and the expression of meaning within a context and with a purpose. So that is, the purpose is not linguistic. The purpose is to find out something that we don't know, to create something concrete, right? To get to a goal, right? That is not linguistic. So we're gonna see with much more clarity as we go on about what a communicative purpose is, but think about the activity that you have. Is it communicative or not, or you don't know? And you don't know, we're gonna find out. Then what is that your students will learn as a result of doing this activity? When they are done, what are they going to learn? Something about themselves, about the classmate, about you, the professor, about the community, about the world. They are going to learn to do something, a new recipe. I mean, what is that you think they are going to learn as a result of this activity? What linguistic resources does the activity have the potential to promote for their acquisition, right? So what are the things, what linguistic things, are embedded, in the task that as students do this activity, they are going to be incorporating, hopefully, these linguistic resources, that they didn't know before, and as a result of this activity, they might be something that they are incorporating in their implicit linguistic system, right? And how would you implement it? What is that you, to get the best at activities in groups, in pairs, you are going to give context first. First is going to be some input and with some readings, then I'm going to put it in pairs. How do you have the idea of implementing this activity? Was it successful? And why do you think was successful or not, right? We all been there, right? This activity didn't work very well, this activity worked. Why is it successful? And when I say successful, I mean something like this, because the activity was engaging, because it promoted a great deal of language use, right? Students were using the language, right? If activity is in English, well, it could be engaging, but you know that is not the goal. The goal is activity promotes a great deal of language use, of target language use, because it exposes students to great amounts of language for interpretation, to input, to promote creativity, because it's relevant for my students, because it's interesting for my students, because new content learned is you know, something that they are interested in, because it's valuable. Why is that this activity? Why would this activity was successful, right? So I'm gonna give you like 3 minutes, right, to think about all this. And then we're gonna share it, you know, even you can share it with us, you know, the rest of us, or you can write it on the chat very quickly. Okay, let's see. Erin already said something, Erin. Okay, thank you, Erin. Let's start with Erin. It says here, it's a slide presentation of an imaginary voyage of 2 French-speaking countries can be considered a task. It says she says that. Let's see. Consider a task. My students really enjoy it because they had a lot of agency. They got to pick the countries and the sites they talk about, as many of them learn about the world outside the US for the first time, oddly enough, and decided maybe it would be such a bad place to visit. Interesting. So yes, it looks like it can be a task, and it looks that, you know, that it was very interesting. The purpose was to find out something about countries, right? And the students had the agency, and that was one of the factors to make it engaging, is that when the students can choose, you know, it could be a limited amount of choices, but at least they have to choose something. Okay, fantastic. And Kevin says the task to maintain the flow in a conversation about leisure activities. So they are going to talk about leisure activities. Students need to use their understanding of rejoinders to validate their speaker. Okay, like in like a negotiation of meaning. Moi aussi, mon emploi, pas moi. Perfect. Can let the speaker know if they are being hard. Okay, so a lot of negotiation of meaning. It's the person's listening is already engaged because we are talking about leisure activities, which is a fun topic. Yes, fun topic, right? They are motivated to use the linguistic tools to express their opinions and keep the conversation. Okay, fantastic. The only thing, Kevin, think about it. You're gonna have a lot of opportunity to polish your activity in this workshop. But think about what is the goal of learning about leisure activities, right? Why do we want to learn about leisure activities? Otherwise, it seems like it's just, you know, language practice, right? Or practice negotiation of meaning, and we don't want that. What is the purpose of learning about each other's leisure activities, right? There must be an outcome. Okay, and then Marta says the task, surveying classmates to the start of the year in order to complete a chart of birthdays. Okay, very good. That will be posted on the wall in chronological order. Fantastic. So in that way, you know, you have the chart of birthdays, and when the birthday comes, you know, and you can have the, you know, when the birthday of your peer are. This is a very important fact to know in the classroom, so you can say happy birthday that day. Fantastic. Okay, very nice. Okay, so I'm going to so these are very good examples, right? And as we continue, we are going to polish this task, and we want to see if we can make it in a target task or maybe a pedagogic task with a bigger goal. So I think you have a very good idea. And now let's see, some of you say, well, this is a task. Let's see if let's see if this is a task or not. So in order to see if my activity is a task, let's define what a task is, right? That is the most important thing. Is it a task? Well, let me think what is my definition of tasks. And there is plenty of definitions of tasks, right? In the literature, all of them have, you know, a thread in common. But I have chosen this one from Peter Skegan, that I believe it is, you know, encompasses, you know, what a task is. So it says here that a task is something that we must do that needs language to be completed, right? It needs language to be completed. So if the task is, for example, to make the bed, well, that is a task, but not a task in the sense that we want, because you don't need to use the language to make a bed, right? Necessarily. Okay, so let's see in particular what is a task. So first and foremost, meaning is primary, right? The task is not about language practice, it's about conveying meaning somehow. That is the most important, I guess, characteristic. Then students are not given other people's meaning to regurgitate. That is realistic and student-centered. Students are using their own meanings, right? This this is because, in the past, maybe in the present as well, you would give students dialogues, right, to practice and memorize, and this is not a task. The students have to convey their own meaning, from their own mind, right? It's gotta be from the students' own intentions. Then there is some sort of relationship comparable to real world activities, right? There must be an application outside of the classroom. It's used for the students. This task is something that maybe humans do, outside of the classroom, or resembles things that, authentic things that we use with language, right, in the world outside of the classroom. Task completion has some priority. So the goal is to be able to do the task, not necessarily how well you do it, right? The goal is to complete, like in real life, right? In my task today is to give you this workshop in my second language, right? Well, the way I do it, my fluency, the way I use my English, my pronunciation might not be the most important thing. Did Claudia give the workshop, and did Claudia really fulfill the goals that she said she was going to fulfill? Okay, or to reach. Okay, and then the assessment of the task is in terms of the outcome. So was the task completed or not? Did the students do it or not? That is the assessment, the main criteria for assessment. So take your activity, right, the one that you thought about, a few minutes ago, and see if it has all these characteristics. And if not, think about it, make a note, and we can talk about it, how to make it, or how to change it, or how to adapt it so it has these characteristics. Okay. And then I love this quote from Elisa Shintani that encapsulates what a task is. It says, task characteristics are directing at ensuring that a task results in language use, not language practice, language use, where students or learners treat the language as a tool for achieving a communicative outcome rather than as an object to be studied, analyzed, and displayed, right? So if your activity is today we're going to practice the future, well, that might be an activity, but not a task, right? That is not a task by any stretch of the imagination, okay? So this is something that we have to have in mind. And I'm gonna give you some examples. Brandon has a very nice book. And here he compares, what a task is and what a exercise is, So I don't know if you can read it, but I'm reading it for you. I'm gonna read it a bit quick. But a task, you can see from the first, from the first sight, that task is much more complicated, right? Much more complex than an exercise. It might involve students to do more things, right? So let's see the first one. It says additional language students are invited to find out what it takes to survive in extreme circumstances. So the goal is already there, right? The goal is to find out what it takes to survive in extreme circumstances. They are asked to read several newspaper articles from the additional language on people who did. For example, people who survived after they got trapped in a coal mine, people who survived extreme cold or severe earthquake, right? And next, discuss their findings with the rest of the class. During the discussion, they are allowed to also draw on their own prior knowledge or experiences. Afterwards, a whole classroom discussion is organized. The students and the teacher identify the key factors that make a crucial difference for survival extreme circumstances. So students are learning something new that they didn't know before, and they used in the target language to do this, right? That is a task. Whereas an exercise is, for example, something that we all know very well, which is additional language students are asked to fill in the right verb forms in 10 isolated sentences that contain conditionals, right? And this is the examples here. So this is the difference between a task and an exercise. And tasks, as I said, they are much more complex, right? And it involves more cognitive effort from the student, and it has something that's a goal that it is not linguistic. Let's see the task number 2 example just for you to know. So pairs of additional language students with the same cultural background are asked to teach another part of additional language students with a different background how to cook a dish that is famous in their country of origin. So the task is for other people to cook something that you have never cooked, that you don't know, right? And someone is going to give you the instructions to do that, right? They have to give the listeners, right, the clear instructions and feedback in the target language. The cooks are allowed to ask questions and make comments in target language as well. The teacher walks around to support the students in interacting the target language. So that is another task, right? The purpose is not to use any particular grammatical form, is to share with someone a dish that you know and see, if they can prepare it, right? So the exercise could be on the computer. The additional language students are given 12 pictures of accessories and a list of 15 terms. They are asked to drag the correct term on the rich picture, right? Terms include gloves, scarves, earrings, etc. So it's like a match the column kind of thing. So that is that is not a task, that is an exercise. Okay. So these are the examples that I would like you to see, right, and see the difference between what is an exercise or an activity and what is what is a task, really, right? What is something that task, and why task? What is let's say what is a target task now, right? So now that we have what is the concept of tasks and what a task is, right, and we have compared the tasks with exercises, we can see, well, what is a target task? Is, we have a task and we have a target task. So the target task is a task, right? It has the same characteristics of a task that I just gave you, right, from Skehan. But what makes it a target task? Well, and that is very important to know this concept because within the TBLT framework that is put forward by Michael Long, which is the one that I try to use in my program, right? A target task is what drives the curriculum, what drives your lesson plans, what drives your material. The target task is the queen, right, of your module, right, of your pedagogic unit. Okay, so I'm gonna start by giving you an example of a target task that I just did, that we do in Spanish for 104, the fourth semester of the Spanish program at UIC, at the university where I work, and this is a target task that I just did last semester in the spring with my students. So this target task is what I'm going to prepare the students for, right? So let's see, this target task is to design and describe an object that solves an everyday problem to be evaluated by your peers in class with the purpose to select which is the best object, right? So this is a target task. So imagine that I tell you, okay, you have 5 days in your class to prepare students to do this. And so they're gonna give a presentation of the object. What would you do, right? Okay, so let's see, how we go about it. I'm gonna unpack a little bit this target task. So this is something that we had to do, as I said, mid-semester of the fourth semester of the course. So the students had to do that, and they had to give a presentation, right, in class. Okay, so this is the task, and the material that I use to complete this task was from my textbook, but I want to give you the example of the material so you know more or less what it looks like, right? What a task how materials can really facilitate the completion of the task. Okay, so this comes from my textbook, or one of the textbooks that we use, and this is the material used for the completion of this task, and it's called Soluciones para Todos, solutions for everyone, right? And you can see right from the start that this is the final task that has 1, 2, 3 steps, right? It's a structure, right? And in each step, something has to be done. For example, it says here, it's in Spanish, but I'm gonna translate to English so everybody understands. These 3 persons, Juan, Roman, and Monse, right, have some problems that are practical problems in their everyday life, right? Read their testimonials, read their problems, right? And what object do you think they need to solve this problem, right? And then you're going to comment with your classmates. So let's see what are their problems. Juan says that he is going to open a technology or electric device store, right? And that the next month, and that he wants to for the store to have certain topic, certain theme, and he needs uniforms for the employees, to wear in this futuristic, store. And he needs ideas what kinds of uniforms they could use, right? They could wear. So this is one, and he's 41 years old. Then Roman says that he has very low memory, doesn't have any memory, and he's always losing things. And that's last time, he lost his keys, and from his house, and it was pretty upsetting. But he has friends, that had, keys or copies of his keys that he can go and take when he loses his keys. However, he's gonna move to another city and he doesn't know anyone there, so he needs something that prevents him to lose his keys, right? And he's 34. And Monse is what this person here in this picture. Monse says that she doesn't stand any noise when she's sleeping. However, that she never listens or hears the alarm clock when it goes off, in the morning, and she needs something to wake up in the morning because she never hears, the regular alarm clock, right? And she goes to work. She arrives at work very late, and that is the situation is not pretty good. So she needs something to help her, and she's 25. So these are, right, the situations, the problems that have to be resolved, right? Now it says here in pairs, decide, which object, or which problem you want to resolve, right? And see and design an object, right, that may solve this problem, right? And the object, you need to say what it's called, what's the name, what is like, right? What is it like, and who it's for, who of these three characters are for. So then when they finish, they have to present this, object to the class and say what it is for and what does it do, right? And in what ways it resolves one of this person's problem. So this is the material that is meant, because all materials are meant to be adapted, right? We always are adapting materials because this person that wrote this very good design task, by the way, does not know my students, right? And doesn't know what I want, doesn't know my context. So we need to adapt. It nevertheless is a task, right? It's a task. And it is complex. It's a complex thing to do, and students need preparation, not only linguistically, but also in terms of presentations and all of that, cultural, right? To do these tasks. They cannot do it right from the get-go, right? We need to give preparations. So this is something that is a task. As you can see, nowhere here does it say use the subjunctive, or you have to use 3 words in about objects, or you have nowhere, right? It's just the task, and we need to prepare students to do this task. Okay, you can adapt this task. I adapted because I didn't do it in pairs. I did it individually, right? So I tweak it a little bit. All right, so how do I implement this? How do I prepare my students? What does it look like? We need to have a pedagogic unit. So now that I have my target task, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but now that I have it identified, what this target task is like, then I will be able to prepare the pedagogic unit. How many days do I need for my students in classroom, for my students to be prepared to do this task? What am I going to teach for them? What do they need to know linguistically, pragmatically, culturally, to be able to give a presentation about this, right? How am I going to evaluate it? These are very important aspects that I won't have to cover today, unfortunately, but that if you see other videos from Extempore, I have lots of evaluation ideas to assess, these tasks. But how did I go about it? So the pedagogic unit, starts at the end, right? So in day 6, I put it, in my curriculum, we have 5 days to prepare these students for the final task. So the students have to design and present an object that resolves an everyday problem. Okay, so what I did in the previous 5 days was to do pedagogic tasks, tasks that will help students to do the final task. And as you can see, I'm gonna go a little bit tomorrow, we're gonna talk about these pedagogic tasks, but as you can see, these are tasks themselves. That is, they have an objective that is not linguistic, and students have to do something. So for example, the first one was to identify the object that seems to us the most interesting or innovative, right? So it was a task differently from this final task, right? And it was students read about several objects, and they have to read their qualities, right? And decide which was the most interesting or innovative. So they work in groups, and it took me like maybe most of the class to do it. So my lesson plan was directed, was my lesson plan, the goal of my lesson plan that day was to fulfill this objective with the materials that I created, or that the textbook had for students to do that. So this is the pedagogic unit, right? As you can see it holistically. And your lesson plan is led, is guided by your final goal. Okay, so let's see what target tasks are. Yeah, after you will see the examples, I'm gonna give you the definition or the characteristics of this target task, and you tell me if they have it, if my target task fulfilled or not. So the target task within task-based language teaching, within the framework that is put forward by Michael Long, which is the framework that I like the most. There are other ones, like, for example, Jane Willis has this TBLT frame, that's task-based language teaching. Rod Ellis has another one, right? But the one that I prefer is the one that Michael Long puts forward, because I think is the one that is most informed by what we know about language acquisition and English teaching practices. So this is the one that I try to follow in my program. So within Michael Long's version of task-based language teaching, target tasks serve as an indication of the extent to which a learner can do something related to the real world and relevant to their needs. That is, these target tasks ideally are things that students are going to need to do when they finish their studies, are things that students find valuable because they have personal goals to learn this language, are things that maybe students find interesting, as for elementary school, or for maybe even high school, junior, maybe students do not know what they're going to do with the language, but they have things that are interesting to them that I would like to do, right? In any language, right? But they something, sports or things related to video games, to something that it is, interesting for them or for their needs. Or maybe things, as we are going to see, is something that is important because they are part of the curriculum. So whatever they will do in biology, in English, in social sciences, in natural sciences, maybe we can incorporate all these things into our language, our language class, and do something equivalent, but in the target language, right? So the first of all, target tasks, as we saw, are the culmination of a pedagogic unit, right? That is what drives our lesson plans, right? And they resemble real-world tasks. Target tasks are identified and selected based on a needs analysis. And needs analysis, according to Michael Long, could be super complex. I wish I could do that, and I hope I can do that. That is my project for my program next year, to conduct a needs analysis in my program. However, we don't have to do, very complex things. And needs analysis could only be what is that students, know your course, right? Know what is the profile, and see if you can find patterns, and see what is the things that students are interested in doing, right? I have a textbook, and I have used these target tasks, and I have to choose and pick, which target tasks are more or less interesting or valuable to the students. And my goal for next year is to remove tasks that are definitely not doing much, and maybe put other tasks that are more in tune with what my students in college want to do, right? Target tasks, as I said, are the goals of instruction. So pedagogic units, as you saw, are built with pedagogic tasks, which are tasks that prepare students to accomplish target tasks. I cannot, stress enough that when we have a clear object, everything is easier. easier, I'm telling you, or at least less difficult, let's put it that way. And finally, students are evaluated on the target tasks against criterion. So it's not norm-based, it's not like against each other. You have a criterion, that have evaluation. Jude Krosnowski is going to give a webinar, I think, in this week about rubrics. You know, you want to see this webinar as well, because you are going to see what rubrics can we use to evaluate a target task, right? So what is a criteria? Okay, so this is what our target task, and I hope that at the end of this session today, we have a clear idea of if our activity, the one that we use at the beginning, is complex enough, is interesting enough to become a target task, or if we have already other activities that we do in our classes that seem like a culmination because they are complex, students need lots of preparation, it has several steps, is something interesting, and we can use as target tasks. Okay, so there are hundreds of target tasks. I mean, hundreds. I want to give you a list of 10. So just to maybe give you an idea and give you some ideas that you can use some of these for your target task in this workshop. For example, I'm gonna give you 5. I'm gonna start with 5. For example, create a poster with information about a classmate. That is something that the students, the beginner students, can do, right? And they do it in my program, in Spanish 101. They have, as a result of an interview, they have to interview the classmates with several questions, and they create a poster and they present it in class, and then they, it's a way of even like a formal presentation to the students. Design a game, very interesting. Follow directions to fix something is a task. Write your classmates' biography. We do that in my program as well. Design and present your ideal neighborhood is a fantastic task, that my students do in Spanish 102. Check, for example, check-in tourists in a hotel is something that if you have, these students from community colleges, or maybe in my college, students who want to do more into the this industry, they can maybe do that in the classroom, or at least, something that is equivalent, right? That prepares them to do this, give an elevator speech. This is it's an interesting activity, I think, for advanced students, because it needs fluency, of course. Write a formal email to your professor requesting an extension, right? Read several restaurants' menus and select the best one based on certain criteria. This is a target task that it doesn't involve interaction or expression, right? Because tasks, communications, also interpretation, and there are many tasks that involve only interpretation, right, to be done, such as, this one that we do very frequently, in the real life. Or leave a voicemail encouraging voters to vote for a candidate. This was, for example, my project for the course that I just finished as the language teaching course. My project was this target task to train students how to leave a voicemail in Spanish to encourage, participation, in voting. It's something that I received in Chicago because we have major elections in Chicago a few months ago, and I received, a voicemail from someone in Spanish, because, I'm Claudia Fernandez. I think that that maybe I am the history, people that need, or it would be more encouraged, if I listen to this voicemail in Spanish and someone left a message. So it's a task for that person, right? And that person had to be prepared to leave a voicemail in Spanish, encourage me to vote for certain candidate. I think it was Chuy Garcia or something. All right, and hundreds more. So there are many. I mean, you might have in your mind already 5 or 6, or maybe none. I don't know. I lack creativity sometimes. But one of the things that help you to identify a target task is what my students want to do or need to do, right? So get to know your students better. What is that you would do that students would like to do, right? That is a good point of departure. Okay, so what target task would you like to try in your class? Gisela says, oh, I love this. Yeah, okay, Gisela, just pick one, right? Like pick one and see how would you prepare these students? How would you, make this concretize this task, right? What would you do? So as I said, how to select a task. I'm gonna give you, I'm gonna repeat that just for you to think, right? what are your students interested in, right? What do they need to want to do, to learn to do with additional languages? What tasks are they expected to do in other subjects? If I were in elementary school or in high school or in junior high school, maybe that would be a very good point of departure, right? Or what do people do in the real world outside of the classroom? The classroom is the real world as well. I'm not saying that it's not the real world. We are real people, right? But I'm saying the real world outside of the classroom, right? That need to do, or that in additional language, or what will students like to do after graduation, that may require the use of additional language. Maybe some students want to go into volunteering for political campaigns, right? Like for university students in Chicago, for example, right? And maybe they would like to know, I would like to know, make a phone call, and talk about, people and encourage people to vote. How do I do that in Spanish? It's a necessary thing to do, for example, right, etc. And as I think that you are already thinking, right? Oh, let me see what task I could give my students to do, right? So as you select your target task, try to answer these questions. And I'm going to give you, I can't see the chat if there are some questions before I give you, like, I don't know, maybe I'll give you 5 minutes or 3 minutes to think, to draft, your target task. Then you're going to share it with a partner, and Grant's going to give me we are going to put you in breakout rooms with only one person, right? And share it with a partner, just to see. You don't have to put the whole thing right together, but just discuss with a partner if this task would work or not for your students. How do you know? How do you know? So I'm going to give you some examples, so some things to consider. So answer this question: why this task? In what ways this task is going to help my students? Why this particular task for my students? What is the nature of this target task? This is a very important thing, And for me, it was very difficult with my target task of leaving a voicemail, for a candidate. It was very difficult. Well, not very difficult, but it was challenging for me to know the nature, because I'm not an expert in political campaigns, So I don't know exactly what is that a volunteer has to do. But nevertheless, we need to know the nature of this task. What does it require to be completed? How do you know when it is completed? How do you know when the students are done, right? How would you implement it in 2 days, 1 day, of class? In my program, we implement the target task, the whole class session, 50 minutes, is just for the target task, the culmination of the unit, right? And how would you do it? For example, for this task that was to design an object, students had to know from the beginning, this target task, and they had to design the object before they presented in class, right? So it was this type of implementation that we need to, to think about in terms of management, the students. What do students need to know linguistically, pragmatically, and cultural, right? So that is a very, very important thing, because the nature of the task is going to drive the language. So you have, the task is a limited thing, and you are going to select what students need to learn linguistically, what grammar, vocabulary, expressions, etc. Pragmatic things that they need to learn according to the task. The task limits that content. This is the best advice, the best thing that I have ever learned, I think, as a Spanish teacher. You don't need the whole set of commands. You don't need the whole thing. It's just what is that they are going to need. That's it. And most likely at the beginning, at least, I think maybe afterwards, is expressions, fixed expressions, chunks. We're going to see that tomorrow more clearly, right? What it is important, right? What is that my students need to learn, right? And don't say, for example, past perfect. No, the whole thing, the whole conjugations of what words or what verbs specifically are key verbs that students are going to learn, or key verbs and expressions, because words, verbs that do not happen, in isolation, right? So you need to know the nature of the task very well, so you can select, the content that you are going to be teaching, or at least not teaching, because it's pretty difficult, but at least facilitate, with your pedagogic tasks, right? Do students need to be prepared for what mediates the task? For example, do they involve technology? Do they have to give a presentation? They need to know what a recipe looks like. They need to know, because, for example, my students, you don't want to believe it, but maybe you're going to believe it, but some students, they get to college and they don't know how to give presentations. And if the task involves a presentation, then I need to train students to do the presentation, right? It's part of the task, right? So I need to give you and say, well, you cannot read, you have to project your voice, you have to show, with your body language what you're talking about, etc., right? Things that that they need to know that are not linguistically necessarily, but are part of the task nevertheless, right? And then, very important, how are you going to evaluate, right, your task? What is that and usually you evaluate it. The main thing is, was it completed or not? And then you're going to see, well, was it comprehensible? Was it? You can have other criteria that can, that you can use to evaluate the task, and ask you when it's going to be in Thursday or something, about these evaluations, or watch other webinars I have given with Extempore that are on YouTube, and you can see more about, or you can send me an email, and I can give you my evaluations, okay, or my rubrics, right? All right, so I'm gonna give you maybe 3 minutes to think about your target task, and then I'm gonna give you another 3 or 4 minutes when you are done, to discuss that with a partner. Who wants to start?
I can start.
Okay.
Yeah, we discussed about 2 different projects. So mine was more about creating a poster about your classmate. That's for the Spanish one in middle school. So they will apply everything that they learn in class about description and characteristic of a person. So I will ask them to, as a task, to write at least 10 sentences describing their partner, about describing the eyes, hair, body, personality, traits, what he or she likes or dislikes, and kind of like an exit ticket of what they have in common with their partner.
Oh, that's very nice. I like that. The comparison after all. So they would interview their partner. They would create like a poster, and then the final thing is that, well, my partner and I are very common in these things, are uncommon on these things. Okay, fantastic. So they so start. It's a very good. I do that very. I prefer, they have a poster and they have like a picture of the partner, and it's very nice. So it's a very nice task, I would say. Just remember to start with the task, so have it complete, right? What is that your students want to do? And sometimes with physical traits, although it is important for the students to know physical traits, usually, right, because it is a classroom experience, we don't want to say, well, this person is short or fat, or has, you have to be very careful, just because people can be, it's just something, that people can be like, self-conscious about the image. But you can talk about the personality, right? Or you can talk about other things. Fantastic. It's a very nice task. Someone else?
I can go, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
Marta. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I won the lottery and I was in a breakout room with Jason Fritz, and I've learned so much from him and seen him present so many times. So unfortunately, I probably wasted some of our time fangirling, but anyway, I talked about briefly the task that I mentioned in the chat earlier, that at the beginning of the year, we just create a birthday calendar. And it sounds really basic, but I spend the first couple of weeks really trying to build that community in the classroom. And so knowing everyone's birthday is helpful. And he pointed out that, or he drew me back to the concept of how the purpose is so important of the task. And he talked about, creating tasks that have a purpose, again, beyond just practicing a particular structure, but rather to build communication and community and So I felt pretty good about my task after talking to Jason about it.
Yeah, and fantastic. Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
My students are also level 1, many of them brandy new, first time in a language classroom. So everything is heavily scaffolded. But I think it's human nature that we like to talk. We like to talk about ourselves. So
yes,
I've moved quite years and years ago. I used to hope that they would memorize the list of vocabulary, but now I have so many scaffolds around because if they need it, they'll use it. If they don't need it, they don't.
yeah, exactly. And and the purpose is to have that thing on the classroom all the time, right? So we know, we don't forget, when each birthday is when, right? And we can, what the purpose? Well, to say happy birthday to the person, right?
Exactly.
And maybe to say, well, we have so many, nobody's from in October, nobody has a birthday in October. It's interesting, but we have so many things. How many students in December? Oh my God, half of the class in December, can you believe? Or maybe 2, so there are so many things that you can that you can talk about, enrich your class, with as you say, it seems simple, but it's not simple at all, because it involves also to interview the student, and the student has to know at least the number, the month, and the year. If you want to put the year, I don't know if you want to put the year, but it is quite complex, and has, and understand,
Yes.
what the classmate is telling them, so she can write it out. So it involves also memory. Yeah.
Yes, and those are, I'm a big believer, I told Jason this as well, that if the students aren't interested in the topic, it's not useful, but they like to talk about themselves. And if I gave up years ago explicitly teaching numbers, or explicitly teaching months, or explicitly teaching days of the week in isolation. Instead, they come up in our everyday routines, the calendar.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. That's the way you learn it that way in English, or in your first language, whatever it is. And I learned it. That's exactly. It has to have, you need it in order to learn it, otherwise. That's fantastic. It's a very nice reflection. Okay, so let's see. Thank you very much, Marta. And one more that I think we have time for one more.
I can go. That's Dora.
Okay, Dora, go ahead, please, Dora.
Well, the task here is, this is a level 4 AP. So the student have to create a poster with information about inflation.
Oh, wow.
Which is relevant,
like economic, in the economic terms.
Yes, and because the getting ready to go to college, they have cars, they have, so it was, some of them work, so I think it was appropriate for the level. So the student have to know, yes, so vocabulary exploration, align
just
with
give me, sorry to interrupt you, Dora. Talk more before you tell us about what they need to know. Tell me the nature of the task. You say a presentation about inflation, but exactly, can you be more specific? What is that they need to do?
Yes, so they need to know vocabulary that's
but what are they gonna do? What they are going to do in this task? Presentation about inflation, but
well, yes. So they are going to do a presentation of the poster that they created in class. Okay,
and the content. How are they gonna get the content?
They're going to get the content through video clips, through picture talk, which will be a jigsaw image activity, because they'll first have to work in groups to kind of gather the vocabulary that they will need. Vocabulary is based on cause, effects, and solutions.
Okay, all right. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. So think about it, because you are going to, I think you're ready for the pedagogic task, so we're going to do that tomorrow, Dora. But try to define your task, your target task very well. What is it? What is that they are going to present, right? And what is the presentation like? For how much time? What is that they are? What is the specific topic? Because inflation is huge, a huge topic, right? So what about inflation? So I would polish a little bit, make it a little bit more. What is exactly that you want the students to do, and what is the outcome that you want, right? So think about you.
Yes,
you have the right start.
I can share that tomorrow. It has two main, gasoline and food.
Okay, all right. Okay, so gasoline, food. Okay, perfect. So yes, so think about all these and try to do like the one that I showed. You know, ABC. You know, maybe some steps. You know that they have to do. So you have it clear. So you know how you are going to help your students to accomplish this task. Fantastic. Okay, very good. All right, so we're going to continue tomorrow with these target tasks and what we're going to help students to accomplish these tasks. So I will go, I will continue, go forward because we have just a few minutes left. But I'm going to just tell you a little bit about what we're going to do tomorrow. So now that you have your target task, right? More or less, your draft or your target task, the thing is, well, how am I going to help other students to do this task, right? What is that they need to learn? What is that they need to know to do this final task, right? And this, the task that helps students accomplish the target task, which it cannot be one, it should be many, at least 3, 4, 5. I don't know how many tasks the students will need, right? Depending on the complexity of the task, right? Is the pedagogic task. The pedagogic task is, I have it here. The pedagogic tasks are things that are derived from the target task, and prepare students to carry out the target task and are deliberately designed to foster language learning. Right? So you know how languages are learned, so the pedagogic task has to foster this language. But the language learning that is needed for the task, the task is, as I said, I'm going to repeat it, the task is what limits, your content. You only have maybe 1 week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, I don't know, but the task is what is going to limit your content. Okay, so I'm going to go very quickly because I'm going to see tomorrow. I'm going to talk about this tomorrow more in detail. But this is, for example, the pedagogic task that I adapted from my textbook to help students for the object that they were going to design, and they are going to present. Remember my pedagogic task? So this it is my lesson plan. They put it that way. My lesson plan, for example, was to identify a kitchen gadget that is the least useful. The least useful, it could be the most useful. You can adapt whatever you want. In this case, it's the least useful. So my pedagogic task is a task in itself, right? I don't want to practice any grammar or any vocabulary here, right? It is the task is the vehicle, right, for language learning. So what my students have to do, for example, I'm gonna go in detail tomorrow, but it's 4 steps, right? It takes me at least 40 minutes to do that with my students. So students read tweets like this one that I have here on gadgets, right? Then they have to say if they would buy it or not, depending on if they find it useful or not. And then they have to think if they have a kitchen gadget that they never use, right? And why they never use it. I have some models here. Then they have to chat with classmates in groups, and then the group is going to select what is the least useful gadget among their peers in the group. And then one person in the group will share with the rest of the class, and we're going to have a list of the most, unhelpful, the least useful gadgets that we have in our kitchen. So this is something that my students, maybe you find it's very, very simple, right? But they, at least my experience, they like to talk about this, right? It was a good topic to use. But these carries, the language that students are going to use for the target task. For example, in the input, in the things that students are going to read, this has reusable elastic bowl dish and plate covers, easy to use, easy to clean. They come in different sizes, see-through poly, let's see contents. So here are some of the words and expressions that are there because I want the students to learn it. Hopefully, they are going to learn it and use them, whatever it is that they are going to, for them to be needed for the final task. I'm going to go in more detail tomorrow with this, so don't worry about it. So I'm going to go just to finish. I'm going to see what tomorrow is because it's about time, and I want to maybe have some minutes for questions or to share other things if you want. We have a few minutes left. So for tomorrow, what I want you to think is that be ready to respond what meaningful and purposeful activities would help my students accomplish the target task that you identified today. And you are going to create draft, a pedagogic task like this one, for example, like the one that I just presented to you, right? That will help your students to accomplish your poster or your posters, accomplish, whatever it is that you want to accomplish that you designed today. Okay, so Grant says, well, do your homework. It's just thinking, just as you do your dishes, think about it. All right, so I think I should stop here, and I would like to maybe open the room for some questions. I don't know, Grant, I see in the chat there's a few questions. Maybe other people have it. So we have a few minutes. I would be very happy to help you or to answer any questions that you may have, if I can.
Well, first off, a massive thank you, Claudia, for this part one of your workshop. All of the thanks, say something in the chat, all the fire emojis, whatever you want to use to send your appreciation.
Thank you.
Claudia, there were quite a few questions, I think, just around materials, right? And what you use, I think, in your classroom. Feel free to repeat your question if you don't feel it was answered, but I think that was a lot of the people asking about where to find sort of repositories to come up with tasks and what textbooks you use. If you could talk about that.
Yeah, well, I have to say, I have something that it's very important for me, and I am gonna share it with you. I chose a textbook that I have right now because I wanted a curriculum based on tasks, right? So I have my goals already, envisioned, before I choose my materials. So my materials are not deciding my curriculum. I decided my curriculum. I wanted something with my students, and I choose the materials that will help me best to do this, right? So think about that. It's my best advice, one of the best advice that I can think. What is that you want to do? So I wanted a curriculum based on task, and I found these textbooks from Difusión in Spain. It's Aula Internacional is the name of the book, and they have a US based textbook as well. And I use that because at the end of the chapter there are tasks, tasks as defined, by Skigan as a definition of a task it is. So that's why I chose these textbooks, because they have at the end of the module a task, and they have pretty decent pedagogic tasks that help my students to do it, right? So this is my materials. But your textbooks, if you use textbooks, or maybe some materials that it's already, you may already have all these tasks already, right? That you can use, make it the center of your lesson, right? And work backwards, right? This is a task that I think is interesting for my students. It comes from my textbook. Don't follow the textbook necessarily, just say, your point of departure, and then pick and choose what are the activities that you can use in your materials that help to accomplish this task, or create your own, right? But it is less difficult to create your pedagogic task when you know already the goal of your unit, as I said, right? Okay. Is there anything? I hope that I answered the question, but this is what I give. Was it another one, Grant, or someone maybe that wants to?
No, just Claudia, if you don't mind, put the feedback slide. That's all.
Okay, perfect. Okay. I don't know if Alejandro is here. Alejandro, are you there, Alejandro? I don't know if he's, but he had a question, right, about the curriculum, I think. Are you there, Alejandro, or no? Maybe he has left.
He is still here.
I'm here.
Yes, Alejandro, just can you ask your question that you have in the chat?
No, I just want
There are several ones.
I think that you sort of answered by the Difusión books that it have task-based activities. I was just given that it would be much easier for instructors to have, according to a novice mid, you can do these tasks, novice high, you can do these following tasks. So I was just wondering, then there should be, there must be a list or book that would list them accordingly. And I just learned this summer about the, I just posted it about the curriculum by the Extravaganza. I haven't, but I wonder if there is an equivalent in El Plan Curricular. There must be something equivalent by Actful, or I don't.
Apple has the standards, as you know, right? And they have the can-do statements, and they are they are categorized by level too. So maybe the can-do statements can use, that can give you like some inspiration of what type of tasks you can create, according to what the students can do at a certain level. But a task, in my opinion, a task is a task, right? And the students can accomplish the task, right, in several levels of quality, right? But usually most tasks can be achieved, most tasks I would say, it's just that some students that have low proficiency are going to do a job that is different from those who have higher proficiency, right? But the criterion is, can students complete the task with the resources that they have now, the linguistic resources, right? And most likely, some of the tasks, yeah, I would say that. So think about the task and then you worried about the level, that's what I'm saying. You're welcome. Okay, so do you have time for one more Grant?
Yeah, I think so. I think Parker asked, I think, an interesting question. How do your different units of task connect from one to the next, or do they jump from one task to a different type of task?
It's a very good question. They are not very well, they are not connected, to tell you the truth. They are really different, I would say. I don't know if that is good or bad, right? This is a good question. I would say that what happens is that the students, as they learn in the language, they build up, they have more and more resources, and usually the last task that they have to do, well, students are much more prepared because they have more resources to do this task, right? But there is no, as far as I can tell you, if there is, or intentional from my side, to put connections between one task or another, but there's nothing that could prevent you from doing that if that is what one of your goals, or you want something that you want to do. Very good. Very good questions, Parker. And there is another one that makes sense. This says, Sharon, the skills that students need at the topics that interest are not necessarily connected with the time either. Exactly. Yes, exactly. So the skill, yeah. Select your tasks and then you worry about the rest, I would say, right? Select what the students want to do, and then you find out what is that you are going to help students to accomplish the task. Some tasks might need more time than others, right? And the same, for example, the same poster of the same task of the poster, that Martha was saying about the birthdays, right? I can do it with my advanced students as well, right? It's the same. It will be the same. The things that the language that's going to be used is going to be way different, right? But both groups, the novice and the advanced, will be able to complete the task after all, right? Okay, it says Milamic. I welcome my method, which will serve to engage students in the learning process. My students tend to resist learning Spanish because of low-level skills in English. Okay, this makes learning Spanish so much harder and causes them to be less interested. You want you want to elaborate a little bit if you want? I don't know.
Yes, well, even though the majority of my students are native English speakers, they have low-level skills. Even though they're in high school, sadly, a lot of times they're on the 5th or 6th grade level, and yet they're of English. And yet there we are in 9th, 10th, 11th grade. That's where they are. So they struggle in English already. And then whenever I try to teach them Spanish, well, the skills don't translate because they're not there. Now, I am fortunate that our curriculum is very skill-based. They do have, it's a very modernized curriculum. They do have these tasks built in, but they're very, very challenging for them.
Oh, okay. So, I see. Yeah, I see. Yes. Well, you mean by skills that they cannot read? Maybe is what you're saying. Like
their reading skills are rather low. Yes, in English.
Okay. Okay, I see.
So
Yeah,
Spanish makes everything that much more complicated. And even though I tried desperately to show them how much easier it actually is, and the fact that while it's high school Spanish, we're not expecting that same level of Spanish knowledge because they're novices. It just doesn't register with them. And I'm struggling to find a way to make that happen. I love the task base. Like I said, we have that built into our curriculum. I just can't get them engaged enough because they believe that all they do is write it in English, pop it through a translator, and they've done their work. They don't have any more interest or ability to do much more than that. And of course, that's not what we're going for. That's not what I'm trying either. So we practice, but I just don't get the level of engagement. That's why this is great, because it's real world. It's all sounds great, but I can't build the bridge between the low skills that I'm dealing with to what I really want them to be able to do. And it's not like I'm setting super high standards. I'm not doing that. It's very realistic. So I'm just wondering how to make that work. One thing I've done is I've tried to help them create their own vocabulary where we work together on that.
I see.
It's not working yet.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah, I understand. No, it's a difficult situation for sure. Have you tried to identify things that they are interested in, like sports? Or I don't know, you can do maybe like survey art, I don't know. There are things that video games, everyone is interested in video games nowadays. Are they interested in something? So I would start with that, right? And
I'll work on that.
Give them very, very simple tasks to do. Simple, like a few steps, a simple task to do that they can do in Spanish. The simple ones, like as I said, maybe just put together, some pictures and some sentences of what baseball is like, right? For someone that does not know anything about the sport, like myself, for example, right? I don't know anything about baseball. So maybe by doing that, I don't have, the magic bullet, and I don't want to mean that that is just a very, easy situation with yours. But I think I would start, as we are going to see tomorrow, is to find things that are motivating and they are motivating for you too, Parker. For you too. In that way, that you can say, well, this is pretty exciting. As you say, it's real world, it's things that people are going to do, in the real world. So maybe finding common interests might help a little bit.
I'll try that. And I appreciate that you say there's no magic bullet, because there isn't. There really isn't. Every group, every class, every school, every state is so very different.
Exactly, your context. Yeah.
Right. And that is the challenge that, we all face together.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Well, I hope that at least if you say something about, real world and something concrete that they can do and they can show off, very simple, start with the simple, right? Things, but that it might be, something that doesn't require a lot of skills, right? As you say, it might be something, I don't know, try and we'll see. Something about, trying and see what happens.
Yes, thank you.
So you're welcome. Thank you. Okay, so I think we should finish.
I think that wraps up. Yeah.
Yes, it is very. I mean, I can go forever, but I am aware of the time. Everybody's time. It's Monday and we have many things to do for sure. But tomorrow we are going to continue with the conversation. And please, if there's something that I didn't answer today, and I'm sure there are other things. I mean, many things in the chat. We can continue with this tomorrow for sure. It's the same topic, so I will be very happy to address anything that you would like me to address. So thank you very much for your attention and we will see you tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you, Claudia.
Thank
same
you.
time, everybody. Tomorrow we will be here, and we'll see you there.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.